Hi guys, my name is Cameron Nazir, and this week I've chosen the topic describe the concept behind dynamic processors and describe threshold, ratio, attack, and release. So I will start with the definition of dynamic processing first. The dynamic processors are rule-based gain controls basically. The major parameters are the same, but the rules are different. A dynamic processor is something that outputs a signal where the level of the outgoing signal is based on the level of the incoming signal. In other words, a loud signal coming in will come out differently than a quiet signal coming in. Basic types of dynamic processors. There are four basic types of dynamic processors. The first one is compressor, which is the most common one. The louder that signal is coming in, the less level it provides going out. In a compressor, a target level is set called the threshold, and any signal coming in that exceeds that level will be reduced. The higher the level is above the threshold, the more reduction is done. More on this later. Then the second is expanders. The quieter the signal is coming in, the less level it provides going out. In other words, it makes quiet signals even quieter. Much like a compressor, the threshold is set at a certain level. Any signal that does not exceed that threshold is reduced, and the quieter the signal, the more reduction is done. The next one is limiters. Limiters are like super compressors. The idea is to ensure that the level does not exceed the threshold. Because the amount of compression is extreme, a limiter relies on certain functions in design that regular compressors do not have. And the last one is gates. Gates are like super expanders. Anything that does not exceed the threshold is reduced to inaudible. Again, because gates are extreme, they often require a slightly different design than a regular expander. There are some parameters involved in the dynamic processing. When we are programming any dynamic processor, there are some parameters which would be needed, and these parameters are: the first one is threshold, of course. And the simplest definition would be that threshold is the level at which a dynamic processor starts to function. The second parameter would be ratio. Ratio is the amount of compression once the signal crosses the threshold. Ratio is always expressed as input to output ratio. That is, the higher the ratio, the more extreme the dynamic processing is. I mean, basically, it is the amount of processing to be done once the sound reaches the particular threshold. The other two parameters involve that how fast your volume fader in a dynamic processor moves, and these two are expressed in amount of time, that is milliseconds, and these two are of course your attack and release. Attack sorry attack it functions at the beginning of the sound or a transient. For example, in a compressor, the attack would be that how fast the volume fader comes down when the sound reaches the threshold, and release is almost the opposite of it. The release would be that how fast the fader comes back up when the sound goes below that threshold. The shorter the amount of time, the faster the attack or release will work, and both of them can be configured differently. So it depends on what kind of sound you're manipulating with, and it definitely gives you much bigger options to play with your sound. So this was basically a quick description of dynamic processing and the parameters involved in it.